Welcome back to Made by J&D. I'm taking measurements on the front of the motorhome subframe here. You can see right here is one of the front body mounts. That's one on that side. There's one just like it over here. All the rest of them are gone. I think I can reutilize this body mount for the truck cab that's out of frame over there. And until I get the radiator off, I can't tell exactly. But this appears to be about 44.5 inches. Right here, it's all broken and busted up because there's a bolt here. When I'd taken this cab off the truck frame, it was still tied to the front of the radiator, and I couldn't see that. So it just kind of pulled all this down. It's pretty light gauge metal. It's not really attached to the cab, near as I can tell. I guess it is, but it doesn't seem to have much structural reason to be there, other than at the back of the seats. But the main important thing is, how wide is this? Between the wheel wells, it's 40 inches. Well, we just measured that over there, and that was 44.5 or 44. Until I get a better measurement, it's close enough. And that means to slide this in, because I can't really jack this cab up high enough, I have to pretty much just pick the cab up a little bit, and then I'll push the chassis up underneath it and do all the things that I need to do. But I'm looking at the front cab mounts, and I've pointed out the ones over there. These are too far back, but not by very much. These are back about maybe 4 inches, too far back. And I'll show you why. When I measure from the center of the wheels to the front of the motor, it's about 20 inches. So let's give it enough clearance for the pulleys and the belts and, adequate room for everything. That's about 2 feet. Right. Wheel well that I'm trying to fit, and this ginormous wheel opening was for a 40-inch tire, and I have to change that. That'll have to, I don't know. But to keep the proportions right, I can't modify this too much, and that's why I'm trying to go for a 36-inch tire, because a 40-inch was still a big gap. It was a big gap. And a 36 is going to be 2 inches bigger gap, in the radius. But really, for this, right now, the center of it is about here. And hopefully you can see inside here, but this is the wheel well, and it starts about right about here. Well, 2 feet is right about here. So that's the front of the motor, plus room for the pulleys and everything, is right to here. That doesn't leave me room for a radiator because there's, it actually might. This is a continuation of the tub behind. And it stops about here because the driver's seat was on a pedestal and it was adjustable. It doesn't have to be that way. I can extend this if this works. It's roughly the line here. And that's roughly 39 inches. Does that allow me room for the radiator? Let's go look. 40 inches is about to here. That clears the radiator. That clears the radiator. Wow. And it would probably clear it even better because this radiator is leaned forward. And it had to be that way for the motorhome. It doesn't have to lean forward because it's got a big shroud and it's got a lot of room between the pulley here and the fan and all that. There's a lot of room. This shroud can be changed. Do you really think that's going to work? It might work. I'm pleasantly surprised. Wow. Now the front motor mounts, I keep calling them motor mounts, but the front cab mounts, this is going to be the rear cab mount. The front one's going to be up here somewhere. So, I can do that. That's an easy thing. Wow. Regardless of all that, there's still some structure I need to cut away here. These pieces have to come out. There's spot welds. Weld here, here, and here. Up underneath, there's a weld here. And behind there's a bit of spot welds holding on this checker plate to the sidewall and to the what would have been the seat for the passengers. So I'm going to start grinding all that out and getting rid of this little bit of structure so that I can slide that back on there. I'm not going to try to move this too much. That can probably stay. The other measurements I've taken is this is 40 inches wide, and that even clears the air conditioning pump by a little bit. Anyways, I'm going to start with taking out the seat belts. So in my attempts to measure here, there's really no good datum point. So it's kind of like just by eye. And it's close enough for now. This is to the center line of that hub, right across. It's about 20.5 inches from the center of that body mount to the center of this hub. And this hub, the center of the hub, that's going to determine where the tire sits inside that wheel well. The rearmost cab mounts to the center hub of the center of the axle on the fire truck was 17 inches. And also they're further inboard. So I know I have to move them because those are only, their rear cab mounts are 25 inches, 25 and a half. Anyways, I'd never be able to use them because that's about here somewhere. Okay, so one of these has to move. These are too far forward and they're farther apart. Those are too narrow and they're too close to the axle. The thing is, inside the cab, the structure depends on a cross member there. It's a pretty heavy thing that supports the cab. Can't modify that because it gets into then where the seats are and all that. So I can't use the mounts, but I can use the cross member that they're welded to, and that is 17 inches. I'm looking at this here. I can move this back 3.5 inches or whatever it takes. So I think that's the way this is going to work. I'll leave these on top of the frame because that's a good solid point. I'll leave them at 44.5 inches apart. I'll just move them back about 3.5 inches. That'll line them up with the cross member inside the cab. And then the cab, I can move those outboard so that they actually line up and sit right there. So I can, or here, where that's going to be. Good, so I think I got that organized. And then these skirts, I can also move those outboard to line up with the frame, which is around, well, the frame is 44.5, so I can move these outboard about 2.25 on each side. And that'll get this wheelhouse longer, it clears the motor, no problem, it clears everything. Pretty minimal work, actually. So I'm going to get started cutting some welds that are here and just take this skirt, try to get the whole skirt out. It's welded just in spots along here. This side's not going to be as easy as the other because it's blind. I can't get to it. So, yeah. Good. Here's a little tag, it says A. There's another one over there that says B. A and B sides. I've been grinding on this. That hasn't come off, so it must be welded in quite a few places on the inside, maybe. There's nothing there evident. Looks like there's something here. Yeah, it's all welded. Well, Donna just left, but she gave me this good idea. How am I going to support the back of the cab if I'm taking the wheel wells away? Because that's what the sawhorses are resting on. Well, she was the instigator for this. And all I have to do, put this under here. And using the screw, I can even jack it up, get it off the sawhorses. Brilliant. I was thinking I was going to take this piece of metal off here, and you know, it'd be easier to get some clearance. But I'm just having so much trouble cutting it out of there, and I don't want to damage the cab any more than it is. It's welded in a whole bunch of spots. Where it's not welded, it's spot welded. And I just can't cut them out of there without really screwing something up. So I'm going to try to leave it there. This here is just welded straight to this plate, so I can cut that off square. But up here, no, it doesn't either. Oh gosh, this is so hard. All right, I think I can get the grinder into this angle here, up inside there, and grind out those welds along the top. But here, it's all got angle iron on the inside. And yeah. No, I can't do that either. I'm having good luck getting this out. These spot welds, I'm just using a hammer and chisel. I was grinding up in some points, but they're just tiny spot welds. So that's working. Except here, it's kind of grabbing here somewhere. Check it out. Ha! Oh. Just rip it out of there, I guess. Didn't want to do that. This is a little bit different where this one's welded on. There's some spot welds here I have to grind through. And this is all one piece coming through here. So I'll just cut it off the front here, cut through these spot welds, and that'll be the front loose. Got to cut the back loose, and then on the inside of the fender well, chop through, and that should come right off. That's my theory, and I'm going with it. Now this is going to look awful funny because these are going to look like little donuts inside of a barn. But I'm going to roll this up underneath. Hopefully the wheels, I can get them to clear these fender wells. I'm going to have to jack it up a bit to get underneath these bits. Or it may just roll between them, I don't know. I could measure, but that takes too much time. So I'm going to roll the chassis up under it, and my lovely wife is going to keep this from catching best she can. See how this goes. Just hold on to the cab and step away from the tire, honey. You're in front of the tire. Okay, I'm going to have to take some of the accessories off because the radiator actually would go underneath that. But then what? I thought this was going to fit without me doing this, but okay, that radiator is going to have to come out. I'm going to pull the chassis back. There we go. While that's draining, I'm going to get rid of these clamps that are holding these bits. I think I can just kind of bend this around or lay it down. The reason the radiator didn't go in is I knew that it was only good to go where the seat is in the below the passenger seat. Well, that's about 10, 12 inches further forward than the inside of the fender wells. So that's why the radiator was going to hit. But seeing that, there's still quite a bit of room here, and I think this might clear. Depends on how far the cab's going to come down, but I might actually be able to get by without really cutting out underneath the driver's seat on the cab. It was going to strike right up in here, and I knew that because I'd planned, or the way when I was measuring, this is the front of the passenger seat pedestal that the passenger seat sat on. And the radiator clears by a couple of good inches here. But that's a good 14 inches, 16 inches from back here where it was going to hit. I'm still thinking if I move the radiator somehow, I should be able to not cut the driver's area out. Just leave that the way it is. Do what I have to do at the end of the day, but see if I don't have to. While I'm draining the coolant, I'm going to take off all these assorted bracketry. And I think I'll just be able to, the dipstick here, I think I'll just be able to lay that down without taking it out. The shroud's probably going to be the hardest part because it's bolted on 4 places around the periphery, and then I'm not sure where else the main fiberglass bit's screwed on. Unless I can get this boot to telescope in a bit. This fan's filling up most of the space, and I think it's going to be kind of tough to get it out of there. But then I've been surprised before. There's the 2 oil cooler lines from the motor, and they came right off the filter there. Those were difficult to get off. They were kind of seized on. Eventually got to them. At least there's good access. These, man, were they hard to get off of there. They got these tube fittings here, and if it focuses, these fittings here are pretty much seized right onto that nut's kind of seized onto that tube on both of these. Not too bad for 60 years of dust buildup. There's the air conditioning compressor. And yeah, it strikes, but you can see where the frame is. This has got to be cut back about to here. The alternator on the other side is clear as just fine. Over there, through that hole, you can see the the cab mount. It's got to go be pushed backward because both of these have to be underneath this cross member. Let's see where that one is. This raised dais area, kind of like what the motorhome had, just went over, just cleared the top of that air cleaner. And actually the air cleaner didn't clear on the motorhome. They had to recess, I think from the factory, they recessed the cover so that the air cleaner wouldn't hit. I got another inch or so better here than before. I've said multiple times, these wheels are awfully comically small. But I'm going to decided to go to a bigger wheel, and I'll save that for another episode because there's been a lot going into that. I'm going to cut this off even with the outside of this frame all the way up to here. And just slice that off, and that'll all be open then. It's 3 1/4 inches to the center line of this original cab mount or chassis body mount that was on the motorhome. So yes, for sure, I'll have to cut that body mount off and move it back, and that shouldn't be a problem. It's the frame is straight, didn't have any weird bends or anything. Should be able to weld it on, as well as that one over there. And that'll line me up to go underneath this member here. That's the rear cab mount. The front cab mounts are right there. Now I'm going to have to extend this frame, on this side at least, about 11 inches to the front of that. That's a C channel that cab mounts bolted into. And adding on 11 inches will bring it to the front edge of that C channel. On the other side, however, is more to deal with. That's the original power steering. It's not touching. The top of that shaft nor the top of this unit is not touching that C channel at all. So that's going to have to be relocated. There's a bell crank at the end of this rod. I can't remember the name of that rod, but there's a bell crank you can just see. And that bell crank will have to change shape, because that bell crank is what actually runs the tie rod between the wheels. Not a problem. I can mount that all forward. I should be able to line it up pretty good. But that just means that this frame here is going to have to be extended quite a bit further forward, more than 11 inches. It's probably have to be more like 2 feet. Got this cab centered, fore, aft, port and starboard. It's fitting all right. This is about the look that's going to have. Running boards are going to have to come off. They just look funny. That's going to be it for this episode. The cab is sitting very closely to what I saw in my mind's eye. Yes, there are some issues. The wheel and tire combination got to be spaced outward. It's too small. Even a bigger tire is going to look too small. Have to extend the frame out the front for the body mounts, for the cab mount. Cab mounts and the back cab mounts. It's an easy change. Radiator's got to go somewhere. Power steering unit's got to be relocated. But by golly, this is coming together. Thanks for subscribing. For people that are watching that aren't subscribed, please think about it. Give me a thumbs up. I'll see you next time.